Timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang!
When the ball's out of his hands, that's
got enough room. Again. Back to Curry. Step back. Three-pointer. Bang! Steph Curry drills the three. That's a...
It doesn't get any better than this, does it? Steph's ability to generate offense. I've just come to the conclusion that Steph Curry is Neo from the Matrix. In an NBA world where we thought we've seen it all, Steph has transcended what we thought was possible, then transcended it again, then again, then again. This wasn't supposed to happen. 6'3" point guards aren't supposed to just waltz into the NBA and completely obliterate the game's greatest players, but Steph has. The man has been fighting every stereotype we had about point guards, and the more he performs these mind-blowing feats, the more we must ask ourselves the all-important question. Is Steph Curry the best point guard of all time? And if he isn't, what more must he do to truly cement himself as the point guard GOAT? For the longest time, Magic Johnson has pretty much always been the end-all be-all when it comes to the discussion of the point guard GOAT. I mean, sure, there was Oscar Robertson before him, then there was Isaiah Thomas, who played in the same era of Magic, then Jason Kidd, Steve Nash, and Chris Paul after him. But no point guard has really quote-unquote dominated the NBA quite like Magic. I mean, he helped carry the league for a complete decade in the 80s, spearheaded the Showtime Lakers, and even more important than just winning championships, he ushered in a new era for the NBA, which was marked by a flair for the fun. This flair for the fun eventually transcended over into pop culture, and by doing so, Magic literally saved the NBA, which was facing low attendance numbers and falling ratings at the time. Alongside winning championships and being an elite player, there was no question when it came to who the greatest point guard of all time was. Until Steph Curry came into the picture, that is. The Golden State Warriors superstar, en route to creating the greatest modern NBA dynasty, literally changed basketball as we knew it. Offensive and defensive schemes are no longer the same ever since Steph Curry took his talent onto the hardwood floors of the NBA. Then, just like Magic, Steph has become quite the showman. In fact, Steph has often been touted as the greatest show on planet Earth. His combination of shooting and celebrations have sent shockwaves around the world, and in doing so, he's inspired millions of kids from all over the globe, signaling them that you don't have to be a genetically gifted athlete to be great at basketball, that if you practiced hard enough, that there's greatness in you as well. It was clear Steph was literally knocking on the door of the point guard GOAT debate. Then, this one question sparked a firestorm in the basketball community.
Are you the best point guard ever?
Yes.
Whether or not Gilbert Arenas intended to or not, this one simple question lit a fire, and since then, the basketball world stormed over it with analysts, former NBA players, and even the GOAT, Michael Jordan himself, chiming in. I don't count all the tallies because there was way too many to count, but it seems that it's 50-50 at the moment. The people who are in Magic's corner believe it's him, whereas the people in Steph's corner believe it's him. The only problem was that type of discussion wasn't going to go anywhere. So I asked myself the question, what if there was some type of objective metric that we can use to cue in, to once and for all distinguish who's the greatest point guard of all time? No opinions, no bias, just facts. Well, I dug into it and found something interesting. Points, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, effective field goal percentage, and free throw percentages. These numbers aren't everything, but they do provide a good starting point for this debate. So let's start by comparing these basic stats between Magic's entire career with where Steph is at currently. As you can see, Steph wins in points, effective field goal percentages, and free throw percentages, whereas Magic wins in rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. 3 versus 4 gives the slight edge to Magic, but at this point, it is still a debate. These numbers haven't really proved who's better at this point. If anything, all it's done is point out the obvious, that Steph's a better scorer while Magic is the better all-around player. We all already knew that. And unfortunately, this is where the argument for best point guard usually ends for most fans, and they end up using their personal bias to argue from here on out, but we're not going to do that. There's way more we can dig into to find out the truth, so that's what we're going to do. Stat padding is a common practice some players use to fake out how good they really are. Put up a bunch of points, rebounds, and assists in a losing effort, and to the casual fan, that player is a bona fide superstar. I'm not saying that Steph or Magic stat padded, but there's a very limited conversation to be had if we only looked at just the basic numbers. Now, how can we get around this? Well, one way to paint a better picture is with what's called advanced statistics, which are the numbers behind the numbers. It still doesn't tell the entire story, but it gives us a much better insight about players and how they contribute to the bottom line, winning. Player efficiency ratings, true shooting percentages, win shares per 48, box plus minus, and value over replacement. These 5 advanced statistics give us a pretty good idea of just how good a player is in terms of their overall production, their efficiency, impact, etc., etc. So let's see how these numbers can help us in shining a light on the point guard debate. Well, unfortunately for Curry fans, Magic clearly has the upper hand here, winning in 4 of the 5 major advanced metrics. So in terms of who's the overall better player over the course of their entire career, pretty much all the numbers are pointing to Magic Johnson. That's not to say that he's light years ahead of Steph though, because if we look closely, it's a tight race. Like the PER stat, for example. Steph is clearly just a fraction of a step behind Magic in this department. Nonetheless, the numbers at this point do point to Magic being ahead, and like the saying goes, it doesn't matter if you win by an inch or a mile, winning is winning. Still though, the debate for the point guard GOAT isn't over yet. This video would just not be complete if we didn't go over both of their individual achievements, which is paramount when we're on a topic of this magnitude. So let's dive right in. I have to agree with Jay-Z that numbers don't lie. In saying that, however, they don't exactly paint the whole picture. For example, before winning his first championship, people were slandering Giannis's name despite him putting up some of the most absurd numbers we've seen in decades. The same thing happened with Nikola Jokic. Beat Wilt Chamberlain's 1962 unreal player efficiency rating, but don't have a ring? You're just a regular season player, is what people were saying. So obviously hardware is important when we're talking about who's greater, and with that being said, let's take a look. Minus Steph Curry's 5-game injury season in 2020, both players up to this point have played in a total of 13 NBA seasons, and here's the tally of what they've accomplished over that period. Steph has been a part of the 50-40-90 club once to Magic's 0. Magic has been a steals leader twice to Steph's 1. Magic has led the league in assists 4 times to Steph's 0. Steph has been the scoring champion twice to Magic's 0. Magic has been selected to the All-Star team 12 times to Steph's 9. Magic has been selected to the All-NBA team 10 times to Steph's 9. Magic has been an MVP 3 times to Steph's 2. Magic has been a Finals MVP 3 times to Steph's 1. And last off, Magic has won 5 championships to Steph's 4. Sheesh, guys. Magic clearly has the upper hand when we compare everything so far. Basic stats, advanced stats, and even the accolades all point towards Magic as being the greater of the two. Does that mean that he hands down wins this debate? Does this mean that once and for all we can end this debate? Well, not exactly, and here's where things get interesting. So far, we've been comparing apples to apples. Basic stats, advanced stats, accolades. And the truth is, it's fun to compare these. It's easy, we love it, and 9 times out of 10, they're enough to end debates. Like, for example, if we take a look at someone who averages 32 points, 8 rebounds, and 8 assists, and compare that with someone who puts up 15 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists, it's a no-brainer who's the better player. Or if someone won an MVP and we compare that player to someone whose highest achievement is making the All-NBA third team once. There's literally no debate, and if someone tried to explain otherwise, they'd look silly. In the vast majority of situations, universally agreed upon conclusions can be drawn if we just made these basic comparisons. But the thing is, when we get to the cream of the crop, we get to the best of the best, the GOATs, there's so much more finer details that have to be considered. Like in this case, when Magic first entered the league, he was blessed to have been able to play with someone who won 6 of the last 10 MVPs in Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. That's one factor that we gotta take into consideration. I mean, Magic's greatest attribute was his passing abilities, as he racked up more than 10,000 assists over the course of his career. But how hard is it to rack up assist numbers when all you had to do was throw the ball to a 7'2" Kareem, who literally towered over everybody and who also had that unstoppable skyhook? Like, could you imagine how Steph's career would have turned out if he immediately played alongside a prime LeBron James since his rookie season? If that happened, Steph would have been arguably open on every single play for the past decade, and he could have very well won like 11 scoring titles, 7 championships, and eclipsing even the likes of Michael Jordan himself. This is one argument in favor of Steph Curry, and the other is this. So, we already saw that Magic beat Steph out in career averages, but the thing is, Steph started out his career a bit slower and took more time to reach greatness, whereas Magic started out great from the get-go. For example, Steph didn't reach All-Star status until his 5th year in the league, whereas Magic achieved it right out of the gates in his rookie year. So, in this sense, when we talk about who's the GOAT of point guards, an important consideration is, would you rather have someone who's consistently great from day one, or someone who started off just a tad slower, but who had peaks that were much higher? Here, let me illustrate this out for you. We already know that Magic trumps Curry when it comes to overall career numbers, but what if we just took each player's best 3 seasons? What if we only compared each player's numbers when they were at their best? Would this paint a better picture of the point guard GOAT? Well, let's take a look. For this test, I used the seasons where each player had their highest player efficiency ratings, and these are the conclusions I stumbled upon. For Steph, these years are 2015, 16, and 18, whereas for Magic, this was 1987, 89, and 90. So, using these seasons and looking at the respective advanced statistics, this is what I got. Well, that's interesting. Steph wins in PER, true shooting percentage, win share per 48, box plus minus, while Magic wins only in value over replacement. It's as clear as day and night from these numbers that when we're talking about each player's peak years, that Steph was much, much better than Magic. Here's another eye-popping test. So, we already discussed nuances. Magic had Kareem, whereas Steph had Kevin Durant for a few years. But what if we had a way of looking at the numbers by taking those 2 other great players out of the equation? And on top of that, what if we were able to zone in on a period of time where all the marbles were on the line? Well, for this test, I took the playoff numbers of both Steph and Magic when they each won their last championship. Steph, of course, won it in 2022 when he was 33 years of age, and by then, KD was already a few years removed from the Warriors. Magic, on the other hand, last won the championship in 1988 when he was 28 years of age, and by then, Kareem was already 40, way past his physical prime. So, if we take a look at the advanced metrics for this one particular postseason where both players were still at the top of their game, where they were clearly the top dog in each of their respective teams, we see that Steph still outclasses Magic in 4 of 5 advanced statistical measurements. It's already quite evident as to who's the point guard GOAT. Steph started out his career slowly, but when he eventually became great, he reached the highest summit that a point guard has ever gone. Magic, on the other hand, ever since his rookie year, got to play with literally the LeBron James of his era, and through a combination of that plus his own stellar individual play, he's racked up the most accolades a point guard has ever racked up. Some arguments against Steph could be that he's not really a point guard, that he's more of a scoring guard, but the same arguments could be used against Magic, that he wasn't really a point guard but more of a point forward. At this point, because I don't think it's right to penalize a player based on how they started out their careers, I personally believe Steph Curry edges out Magic Johnson when we're talking about the best point guard in the history of the game. And the truth is, the door hasn't yet closed on Steph's career either. If he continues to dominate the league for a few more years, he'll likely rack up more All-Star selections, more All-NBA selections, perhaps another championship as well, and this will only strengthen the notion that he's the greatest point guard of all time. Of course, only time will tell what'll happen, but fortunately for Steph, as of today, in 2023, he's still playing at an MVP level.